Today, I want to talk about a feeling that so many of us struggle with, the feeling of just not feeling good enough. Welcome to Fly to Freedom, the Anorexia Recovery Podcast. This podcast is for you if you're living in a restrictive eating disorder or supporting somebody else. I'm Julia Trehane, your host, an eating disorder recovery coach, and I lived in 40 years of anorexia, orthorexia, and exercise addiction before my recovery journey led me to complete freedom. Wherever you are in your recovery journey, this podcast is for you to help you grow and heal. Let's get on with the episode. So many of us struggle with this feeling of not feeling good enough. It's a feeling that can creep into our lives in so many different ways. It shows up in our relationships, in our work, in our friendships, and even how we see ourselves when we're alone. But where does it come from? Why do so many of us have this deep-seated belief that we just aren't good enough? I totally believed this for most of my life until I started recovery. I was constantly striving to be better, trying to be the best at everything I could be. And it's exhausting. It really drains you. And however hard you try, you always see other people that you perceive as better, that you think they're doing it better, they look better, they're more successful, they're living a better life, they're cleverer, they're fitter, they're more sporty, and all the things. And it just compounds the feeling of not feeling good enough. So where does this belief come from? Because we're not born with it. When we're born, we're just like little sponges, and our brains are incredibly plastic and adaptable, especially through the first years of life. And we're born knowing that we're good enough, knowing that we deserve to have all our needs met. And babies just ask for it. They shout. They are the center of their own world. And they don't self-sacrifice to please others, to try and show that they're good enough by doing things or achieving things. They just are who they are. And during this time of childhood and the first few years of our life, we are absorbing everything around us, particularly from the people closest to us, which is usually our parents or caregivers. And then as we grow further, our teachers and our friends. And the way we respond to the people around us and they respond to us shapes how we see ourselves. If we're loved totally unconditionally and all our needs are met, we internalize that belief that we are worthy of love and care, and we feel secure, safe, and accepted. But if we're loved conditionally, not unconditionally, meaning we get positive attention when we do certain things like achieve a certain grade in school or win a running race or behave in a certain way, the message we start to receive is that our worth is tied to what we do, not who we are. And this is where the belief we're not good enough starts to take root. Psychologists have actually studied this dynamic extensively, and it's often referred to as conditional love or conditional regard. And most children actually grow up in environments where love is conditional, and they start to feel that they're only valuable if they meet certain expectations. I used to receive the messages of, you can't go out looking like that, what will people think? And the starting to compare myself to others and worrying about judgments came from a very early age. And I'm not blaming my parents for this, because that was their conditioning as well, and they knew no different. And I probably did this to my own children as well. And we just do what we know and what we learned, but we can learn differently. And when you get praised for getting an A in your exam or 10 out of 10 on your spellings, then you realize that, wow, I get praise when I've achieved. But if they don't say anything when you only get 5 out of 10 on your spellings, or they say, you should have tried harder, you should have studied more, you should have learnt them better, then we get this message that I'm not good enough as I am. I have to be something else. I have to achieve something to be worthy. And this actually affects us for our whole lives. We end up feeling like we constantly have to prove ourselves to others, to society, even to ourselves. And it's not just our parents and caregivers and teachers that shape our sense of worth. We are also so influenced by what we hear and see from the broader world, particularly from society's expectations and cultural norms. There's a concept called societal conditioning, which plays a huge role in how we feel about ourselves. From a very young age, we're exposed to messages from the media, advertising, school systems, and even from our peer groups that tell us what it means to be good enough. Think about the images we're constantly bombarded with on social media or TV. We see people who seem to be perfect. Even going back to the Disney films that you watch when you're a really young child, and the beautiful Disney princesses with the perfect figures and the perfect features. The heroines and heroes are all in these ideal bodies with these perfectly kind and giving natures, and the baddies are all flawed in some way. They're either in bigger bodies, or they have less than perfect features, or they get angry. And we see this all around us all the time. The people who seem to be perfect with the ideal body, the perfect career, the flawless relationship. And these images create unrealistic expectations of what it means to be successful, attractive, or happy. We get this thing that we have to work our hardest to be successful. We have to keep pushing and trying to be the best all the time. And then we criticize ourselves, believing somehow it motivates us, believing that we say, oh, that was really shit. I need to do better. I need to be better. And when we start to believe that we are not achieving what society tells us that we need to achieve, if we don't have the things or look the certain way, then we believe we're somehow failing, that we're less than. We're constantly measuring ourselves against other people, whether it's comparing our looks, our achievement, our social standing, how much money we earn, what car we have, what clothes we wear. I mean, look at the hype there is for kids amongst the right clothes, the right trainers, and the ones that don't have it are made to feel like they're not good enough. And most of the time, we're not actually comparing ourselves to the average person. We're comparing ourselves to an idealized, unattainable image of who we think we should be. And this makes us feel really inadequate if we don't measure up to this image of perfection. And so then we feel that we're not good enough. Now, if you take these two influences, our early conditioning from our caregivers and parents, and the messages from society we absorb through our whole lives, you can see how powerful these forces are in shaping our sense of self. I just want to take a moment to share something I think will make your day just a little bit brighter. If you're someone who's looking for a simple way to infuse your mornings with a little more positivity and love, I've got something special for you. I'm thrilled to introduce my daily love emails, a little dose of encouragement and inspiration delivered right to your inbox every single morning. They're designed to set the tone for your day with mantras, affirmations, and gentle reminders to help you start your day with intention and love. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or just need a little pick-me-up, these emails will give you the gentle nudge you need to to move forward with clarity and purpose. And as a bonus, every week you'll get an exclusive sneak peek of my upcoming podcast episode, plus extra resources to help you on your journey. So if you're ready to start each day on a positive note, head to the link in the show notes and sign up for my daily love emails. It's completely free, and I can't wait to be a part of your morning routine. Click the link, sign up, and let's make every day a little bit brighter together. And then there's the next layer to this, which is our brain's natural tendency to focus on the negative. This is something psychologists call the negativity bias, and it's actually an evolutionary trait that helped our ancestors survive. Way back when we were living in caves, it was so much more important to remember the sound of a predator lurking in the bushes than it was to focus on a beautiful sunset, to remember the poisonous berries that made us sick than the ones that were really tasty and we enjoyed, because that kept us safe. So our brains are wired to pay more attention to threats and dangers than to positive experiences. And whilst this negativity bias was useful for survival, it causes big problems in modern life. We tend to remember and internalize negative feedback or criticism much more than positive feedback. For example, if you have 10 people compliment you on your work, but one person criticizes it, what sticks with you? Most likely it's that one critical comment. This is because our brains are wired to hold on to the negative. And over the time, these negative experiences, criticisms, and perceived failures accumulate and reinforce the belief that we're not enough. I would always hold on to even a neutral comment, and I could turn it around to be negative because I'd adopted the negative inner critic that reinforced this feeling of not good enough. If people didn't compliment me and didn't say, "That's amazing, you've done really well," then I would take it that I'd done shit, or it wasn't amazing and I needed to be better and that I wasn't good enough. If I made a mistake, which is part of being human, but it meant I'd failed, that I was not good enough, I was rubbish, I was useless. And it's really, really hard to get through life this way. But the good news is, even though our brains are wired to the negative, and we've had all this social conditioning and parental conditioning, our brains are really, really adaptable. And this is known as neuroplasticity, which is a concept that refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, which continues throughout our entire lives. Yes, it's much more so in the first few years of life, but it doesn't go away. And this means that even though we might have spent years and years, like I did, believing that we're not good enough, we can change that belief. And I know that for an absolute fact because I did. And it's not easy and it takes time, but it is possible. And right now, I know that I'm good enough. And yeah, I make mistakes and I do some things that don't work. And honestly, I can fuck things up big time, but I'm human and I'm trying my best, and that's okay. And it's okay to make mistakes. So let's look at some of the practical ways we can begin to change the beliefs. And the basic idea is that our thoughts shape our feelings and behaviors. So if we can change the way we think, we can change the way we feel. And always the thoughts and actions come before the feelings change. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough," you can notice that thought, identify this thought, and replace it with a more balanced and realistic thought. Like, instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," you can say, "I'm doing my best, and that's enough right now." And this might sound simple, but it's really, really powerful because our brains are constantly forming connections based on the thoughts we repeat. the more we can practice compassionate and realistic self-talk, the more those neural pathways strengthen and the old negative ones weaken. And I say realistic because often our negative thoughts and our inner critic make things far worse than they actually are. And we can change things to neutral before we change them to positive, because it's so much easier to be neutral. With the example of I'm not good enough, it can be really hard to say, actually, I'm really good enough, I'm amazing. But you can say, I'm doing my best and that's enough. I'm human. And this is where self-compassion, always self-compassion comes in. And there's so much research into how practicing self-compassion can help reduce these feelings of inadequacy. And you give compassion to people you love and care about, and quite probably complete strangers, but often you don't give it to yourself. And that means being gentle with yourself, especially when you make mistakes or fall short of expectations. And knowing that you're part of common humanity, which means knowing that everyone struggles. And you're probably fine when other people struggle, and you're probably compassionate to them and loving and kind and saying, it's okay. You tried your best. That's good enough. But you don't say that to yourself. And it's time to start, because everyone feels inadequate sometimes, and you're not alone in feeling this way. It is part of being human. Being mindful and being aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment is one of the first steps. Noticing them, noticing when the negative thoughts come in, or when a mistake happens and you instantly start to criticize yourself. Just observe those thoughts without getting swept up in them. And this gives us space to respond to ourselves with more compassion and care, rather than reacting to ourselves with more negativity. And there's another tool that I want to mention, and that's gratitude. And I know it's one of those things we hear a lot about, and sometimes it can feel like just another thing on our to-do list. But there's a reason why it's so often recommended. And there's so much research to show that practicing gratitude actually does really, really help rewire our brains to focus more on the positive, rather than that negativity bias we talked about earlier. When you practice gratitude regularly, whether it's writing down a few things you're grateful for each day, or simply taking a moment to appreciate something good in your life, you are training your brain to notice and appreciate the positive more easily. I always used to notice the negative and never notice the positive, particularly about myself. And every morning now, when I sit up in bed, my lovely husband brings me a cup of coffee because he's brilliant that way. I get out my journal. I don't have my phone in my room. I don't have any technology in my room. I get out my journal, and when my brain is nice and open and clear and not conditioned by all the stress of the day to come, I just write down the things that I'm grateful for. Grateful for a good night's sleep. I'm grateful for my lovely dogs. I'm grateful to be living in food freedom. I'm grateful for a sunny day. And I start to focus all the things that I am grateful for. And it's an amazing start to my day. So we've talked about where this feeling of not being good enough comes from and how it's reinforced by our early experiences, societal messages, and our brain's natural tendencies. But all of us want to feel good enough. This is why we're constantly striving, constantly pushing, constantly criticizing ourselves to do better, to be better. And if we use these tools, like reframing the thoughts, self-compassion and gratitude, it can help us shift this belief. And even with our children, we can encourage them to challenge themselves and to be the best they can be, whilst ensuring they feel loved and valued, so that there's a balance between support and affirmation. And we can do this for our children and ourselves by focusing on the process of growth and effort and self-discovery rather than attaching worth to results or accomplishments. Example, instead of saying, "You're so smart for getting," let's go back to the spellings, "all 10 out of 10. You could say, "I'm so proud of how hard you work to learn your spellings." If a child tries something new and it doesn't work, and they're feeling upset and disappointed, you could say, "It's great that you tried something new." Or if you've tried something new, "It's great that I've tried something new, even if it didn't work out this time. It's okay to feel disappointed about that. What can I learn from it? I might not have mastered this yet. It might not be working yet, but with practice, I can get there." You can say to your children and to yourself, this goes both ways as you reparent yourself, "I love you just the way you are, and I'm excited to see the person you want to be happen. I'm excited to see you growing into that person." Ask yourself or your child what's something you'd really like to work on and get better at. And be proud of the progress that you make or the proud of the progress your child makes. With recovery, look at how far you've come. When you're criticizing yourself for not managing to challenge that fear food or cut down or stop the exercise, look at how far you've come and you're getting better every day. And we all find joy and satisfaction in the process of learning and growing, much more than focusing on external rewards or approval. And this gives us more of a sense of internal motivation and self-worth that isn't dependent on others' opinions. Now, I know this is hard because it's different from how you've been all your life and how you've been conditioned. But I also know you can do it, and I believe in you. And no matter what happens, you are amazing for trying, and you can do this. I know you can. Lots of love. And also, if you want to know more about the science behind why we don't feel good enough, check out my blog on my website at juliatrahane.com, where there is much more in-depth scientific studies and everything about all my podcasts. All right, until next time, lots of love.